Hello again, Cisco. Thanks for taking the time to meet with me again. Last time we spoke, you were introducing us to the One Piece Hero line that was on pre-order, and we're just about near release. And I just gotta know, like, how's it been? How's the pre-order going? Like, it's I'm excited to see the figures, up close and personal, and I've seen a few people who've gotten their heads on already with a lot of rave reviews. But how's on your side of things? Like, how's the whole uh, the hype, the news, everything been with the One Piece Heroes, anime heroes line?
Yeah, it's great to be back. And I think since the last time when we spoke, there's been a lot happening in the One Piece world, right? Not just in terms of the manga and what's been going on with that, but just even in terms of the announcement that we've had and the pre-sale so far for this. But also there's been a lot sort of brewing news on the live action space, right? That like there's like the live action Netflix that's coming up pretty soon. And I think there's like a picture of like the Mary in South Africa and they got some shots there. And I think it's just a matter of like a week or two before they actually start announcing what the cast is going to be, right? So there's a whole lot of buzz just talking about One Piece, which only helps the Anime Heroes line that we are just about ready to launch. I think in like 2 or 3 weeks, depending on the retailer and when like shipments get in,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be available in all the major retailers. Obviously, we're on Amazon or any place you can sort of pre-sell and buy it online. But we're really happy where things are right now, right? A lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people are talking about the figures and they really like them. And people are already basically asking like, what are going to be the next characters into the lineup, right? I know what they're going to be, so I'm sort of holding off on that. But it's still nice to see that the fans are not only excited about this current first offering, but they're already thinking to the future in terms of like what's going to be next, not just to the One Piece line, but just to the next IP and anime heroes in general. So it's a good place to be right now.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, especially for One Piece. Yeah, the Netflix. I've watched a couple of Netflix live action adaptations, and
Huh?
I've been pretty impressed with them. So the One Piece one, I think, especially because it's such a long story. I think with this new version that they can kind of clean it up a bit, because as much as a fan of the series I am, the anime, a lot of the episodes are two-thirds recap each episode.
Right.
So I think with that, with the live action, they can kind of, since they don't have to pace themselves as much, they can clean it up and get a whole new audience in.
Right. And you have to think about like what's the context of how the manga on the Shonen Jump is doing like on a regular basis. Like it's a pretty exhausting clip, right? Like if
Yeah.
I were to start my own manga on Shonen Jump and I can't perform like inside of 4 weeks, like they're gonna cancel me, right? And they're gonna like throw me off. So one thing is just keeping up with the manga, right? And making sure that it's up and current. But when you're doing like a live action version of something, right, you have the luxury of a production calendar, right? And we're going to start here, we're going to end here, and then you can take your time and do the edit and all these things and sort of release it on your own time. So Netflix sort of has the best of both worlds, just in terms of fans who are ready to see a live action version of One Piece, as well as just having the confidence that they can do it, right? If you were to say someone's going to do a live action version of One Piece and you were to say it like 10 years ago, like my first thought is like, it is unfilmable. Like, how are you going to even make these things happen? But I think, not just Netflix, but with other folks who are making adaptations of anime, which is happening more and more, they're getting increasingly more sophisticated in terms of how they're really listening to the fan, right? And delivering on what you think the fan would want. And so far, I think the industry as a whole has been pretty successful in that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, now you hear the news of it, it's not like you're not worried, you're not taken aback, and it's more exciting than it is like
Uh-huh.
anxiety inducing. But so just to go back to the figure, when the net with the Netflix announcements, were you able to like track like the interest in the figures with along with the announcements?
Um, that's tough because the announcements it's really for the property in general, right?
Hmm.
So when and sort of like the tide lifts all boats to use sort of a nautical analogy, but it's difficult to say like pre-sales increased by this much when they started announcing. Now, one of the things that we sort of do kind of measure on a very subjective way is how fast people are talking online to the news, right? So I know that when we first announced the Anime Heroes figures about One Piece, there was a whole lot of chatter, right? On Twitter, on Facebook, on Reddit, and all these different social channels. Folks are talking about it, right? Which is good for the brand overall. And then when the One Piece announcement, every time there's new news or a leak on what the casting is going to be, or an image, or anything coming from Toei Animation on One Piece, like more chatter happens across all the different channels. So it's tough to say specifically how are the action figures doing when there's new announcement, but I think the more appropriate way to think about it is there more just chatter going on in general every time there's news, whether I do the news or whether or not it's Toei Animation or Netflix makes an announcement, right? So we're due to have a press release in probably another couple weeks that is more broad, that talks to like the entire toy industry, not just to like anime fans. And so hopefully, like when that announcement goes on, there'll be a whole lot more pickup and news, and that'll help not just my figures, but it'll also help the Shonen Jump. It'll also help the Netflix, right? So we're all sort of working together, moving in the same direction to make sure that One Piece is as accessible and as popular as possible.
Awesome. So have you seen any like because I saw some pictures on Instagram where people actually were able to pick up the figures at GameStop, and I saw a couple review videos. Were you able to see any of those yet?
I think I saw one I forgot the name, but I know they were able to do like a little unboxing and stuff like that. So it's starting to get out there, right? Like in terms of like when is there a street date? It really matters as far as like the industry goes. It's like when do we ship out to like the retailers, distribution centers, right? And then when can they start delivering, right? So it's between the next 2 weeks. Different folks are going to be getting it at different times, and it just depends on how quickly folks want to be able to do something. But so far, the reactions that I've seen are pretty positive. I think my favorite comment so far is about Zoro, right? And what I'll do is I'll kind of switch the camera right here, just so we'll see, right? So first of all, like these are live action versions, right? These are not models or production, and they look really, really good, and they're like super posable, right? So everything from like Luffy right here to we have, Sanji, and he has, his dimble dangle leg, right? But then like when you look at Zoro, right? And then specifically you have like these three accessories, the swords, and they come out. I think this is the one where most fans are talking about it. They're like, hey, like the swords come out, and you can, have him holding all three swords, or you can have him just all three in his sash. And so I think it's very gratifying to see that the level of detail is being appreciated by the fans themselves. So, and even if I can, without trying to break him too much off of the stand so he doesn't fall off, right? Like, even if we look at the detail here, right? It's like the three swords are right there, right? And they come right off, and just the level of detail and just the posability of this, like pretty outstanding, right? And even in terms of like Luffy, right? I mean, that's really cool, right? So I'm really excited on how flexible they are, and don't fall over, Luffy. Of course, the dangers of posing stuff. But still, we're really, really happy with the reviews that we've seen so far. And this is just the beginning, right? We have a few characters that are already in the pipeline being designed right now, and I can't wait to see what they are. And I think fans will really be happy with our choices.
I know you can't reveal those quite yet, but with conventions starting to, with things starting to normalize a little bit, conventions are, started to do smaller scale, and even with there's been online, still with online exclusives. Could we look forward to because I know the Dragon Star line has convention exclusives. Could we look forward to Anime Hero convention exclusives?
You know what? I think we can, because I'm the one who like determines if we're going to do it or not, right? And I think it's a function of timing, right? So when you're making an action figure, right, there's a certain amount of time that you have to give, just even to like mold it and tool it and to make sure that it's going to be a good looking action figure. But then there's the approval process, right? And so this has to go to Toei Animation, and I would only imagine that like Oda-san would have to take a look at him as well, because like this is his stuff, right? Yeah. And so whenever we create a new character, we sort of have to build in those timelines, right? So if we're thinking, let's do an exclusive for Comic-Con San Diego in 2022, right? I have to work backwards and think, when is this physically going to be ready to ship in the first place? And then I have to work back, right? And if the calendar doesn't work out, then I'll say like, well, the earliest that I could produce it would be August, in which case then I'm 2 weeks late. So I have to ask myself the question, do I just want to do a pre-sale at a convention, or do I want physical product there so that people can do it, right? So I would love to have everything ready to go like at the beginning of July, right?
Yeah.
But just depending on the approval timelines, as well as when we're starting to sell and when we're trying to sort of put it together, like it's a little bit of an art in terms of making sure all the calendars line up. But if I could control all the different factors, I would want to have like an exclusive type of figure or style, you know, at least once every show. It's not always the case, just because of how often we have these things come out. And if it makes sense, not just in terms of, is it something the fans are going to love? Because I'm sure that they will, because it's an exclusive, right? But can we support how much we're going to make, right? Because when you make an exclusive, I'm not going to make like 80,000 of them, right?
Yeah.
Because it's no longer special. If you look at most exclusives, they tend to be like, you know, 1,000, 2,000 max, right? And if it's a brand new character, I got to figure out, what do I do with the existing mold that created that 2,000, right? And then what do I do with it later? Is it really exclusive and I can never make that figure again? Versus, is it just a deco change? Is it more of a tooling thing? So there's lots of things that I have to think about when I do it. But I definitely want to be able to give the fans something that's going to be super cool. It's just a matter of timing, approvals, and if it's the right character choice at the right time.
All right. And just without being specific, but just because in like the Dragon Stars, you do have Build-A-Figures. Is that on the table for the One Piece line?
Build-A-Figure. You know what? It's funny, when in the action figure world, you're always thinking about like, what can we do a Build-A-Figure with, right? And how many characters would it take, right? Is it 4 characters? Is it 5? Is it 6? What would they build a figure into? I think for the short term, we want to have enough figures in the line before we start considering a Build-A-Figure, right? Because we want to be able to have fans to collect something they can sort of go back to. Because if you start a Build-A-Figure too soon, then you're sort of, for lack of a better word, stuck with some characters that have a Build-A-Figure and then the next ones don't, right? And then fans will get confused. So I think once we sort of get moving on a pretty good clip and we have like, you know, 8 or 9 One Piece characters under our belt, then maybe that Build-A-Figure is something that we can explore doing, right? It could be something that we do in an exclusive, right? Like, hey, here's this exclusive only available at Comic-Con, and that might be that Build-A-Figure piece that we might, you know, sort of put on the shelf for later on, right? So I'm always thinking about it. It's just a matter of what are going to be the right character choices for it, and what that timing is going to be, right? Because realistically, when we launch a new IP like One Piece, we start off with like 3 characters, right? And then every season, the fall, the spring, we'll release like 2 or 3 more characters, right? But if I'm doing a Build-A-Figure, then I'm basically saying, if it's going to be 5 characters to build 1 bonus figure, when do I release those? Over the course of like 18 months? Or do I do it all at once, right? So I have to make sure that the market can take in that demand, right? And make sure that the retailers are also able to take in that Build-A-Figure, right? Because if you look at all the different slots you have at retail, and it takes 5 characters to build an extra bonus character, is each retailer going to take all 5? Like, I don't know, right? So in which case then, are you creating sort of this like treasure hunt for like the One Piece or whatever it might be, which is actually a clever idea. But there's lots of things to think about, but I think eventually we'll get there. But I probably want to wait a little bit.
Okay. So I guess the last question for the One Piece line, with it being so close, what's the you know, aside from like the pure enjoyment and appreciation of them, what do you hope? What do you really hope like fans take away from this line? Or like what do you want like their first impression to be once they have their hands on the box?
You know what? I think I would want their first impression when they look at it would be like, oh, wow, like it looks just like the anime, right? I want them to be pleasantly shocked, right? Because in the anime, it's so stylized, right? That when you think about like, how do you make like a Luffy action figure, right? Not a whole lot of skinny action figures out there, but Luffy's as skinny as they come. So when I first saw them, I would hope that fans have the same reaction that I did when I saw the first production model. I'm like, all right, this looks cool, and it doesn't look flimsy or stringy or anything like that. So I think my wish is that fans look at it in the box and they'll be like, okay, that's neat. I have to get one, right? And then they're going to look at the back of the box and they're going to see what other characters are in this line, right? Because obviously, as a marketer, my hope of hopes is they start saying, what's going to be the next couple characters, right? And how can I start collecting these things? Because I mean, they're cool action figures stand alone, but they're meant to be collected, right? That's sort of the whole point, right? Some people collect figurines and statues, and the statues are great, right? And they're beautifully detailed, but they're static, right? Like an action figure, especially of this quality, has a benefit that you can change it up how often you want. And you can put them in your own settings and you can take pictures of them. And I see like the fan forums, and they have like these little internal contests of who can pose like the best version of Luffy at the beach or on a piece of driftwood or something like that, right? And it's those fans who are creating that content for themselves that really shows how much One Piece resonates. And it's something that we're really happy and that we're happy to keep on making more of these things for them.
That, just talking about that, I really want the Zoro figure because I want to put it in the most random places. Just him being lost. I'll just
like a Flat Stanley type thing, or like,
yeah.
oh, he's in Paris, and over here he's in like Chicago. That would be cool.
Just have him like crossed armed, like looking around, like this isn't right. Like just, or have him put in like next to other figures like Transformers, and he's like, hey, this isn't the right place. It's him getting lost all over the place.
His expression can do that in many different ways, right? And it's all about the fans. It's all about how can you take these characters and make them your own, right? Because the experience just doesn't stop when you buy it, right? The experience continues to go on as long as you own the figure. Whether you want to put them up on a shelf or on your desk or next to your phone or pose them next to other things, whether it's another figure or whether it's a potato, right? It's like all these things, it really is about imagination, right? And creating stories of your own, which is really the whole reason action figures exist in the first place, right? Like I can keep watching the show over and over again, and I know exactly what I'm going to get. But with an action figure, right, it opens the way where you can sort of create your own stories, right? And that really is why we're in this business in the first place, right? To create new stories and experiences with a property that folks love.
I'm definitely using that in the log line. That was a great quote.
Yeah. Get it up.
That was really good. The One Piece lines, I believe the official street date is the 18th. And is there any last memento for that, for the 18th? What
Yeah, I mean, they're available online right now, right? So if you go to Amazon.com, GameStop, Target, Walmart.com, all the major retailers that have a .com site, like it'll be on there. You just have to look for it. And then depending on which retailers carry it, they'll be physically available on shelf if you can't wait, starting in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. It just depends on where you are in the country and like truck schedules and that kind of stuff like that, but they'll be out there. And I'd like to ask your fans just to continue to support us and follow us on social. And when you get a hand on these guys, let us know what you think, right? Because I read all the feedback of what fans are saying about the figures, and I take that into consideration when we're making new figures, right? Like, oh, why can't his boots be taller or whatever it might be, right? And depending on the style of the character, like we look at all those things, and when we're brainstorming on what the new characters are, right, we take all that stuff into account.
Is there an official hashtag that you'd or I'll have all the social links, but
just like follow us. We have like our Instagram account and Facebook, just Bandai America. So it's one centralized handle. So which has all of our stuff, whether it's Dragon Ball or Anime Heroes or anything that we produce.
Okay, I'll be sure to put that in everything. All right, Cisco. Thank you again for taking the time to share everything with the One Piece. Give us teasers for what's next, and yeah, can't wait.
It's great to be back.